Hello and welcome to the Wednesday show presented by This is Ibrox. I'm your host, Kyle McLean, and I'm joined by two fantastic guests as always. Firstly, John, how are you doing? It's from moaning about Scotland to moaning about Rangers now for you.
I know, I can get back to what I do best. At least the Scotland stuff's only once every so often.
Yeah, you're telling me. And Kyran, how are you doing today as well, man?
I'm doing well. For the first time ever, I'm gutted the international break's over and I'm back to watching Rangers.
You're not joking. It's only an international break like no other, where people were tuning into Albania versus Ukraine on YouTube, because I know I was working late last night at my work and I wasn't fully watching it, but I had it on in the background, which is interesting to see now. But now the international break is over. Full focus on Rangers now. There's plenty to talk about in tonight's show, as always. We'll discuss Jim Gillespie appearing to drop out of the race for the CEO. That's pretty much all been but confirmed. Get the guys' thoughts on the CEO position itself. Obviously, there was a wee Rangers Charity Night Foundation with a question and answer with Philippe Clement. I hardly heard a thing out of it, which is a bit strange. But a couple of hours before we come on as well, there was a new VAR monthly show from the SFA, which was announced. Really keen to get both the guys' thoughts on that. The title question of the podcast is who should be Rangers' first choice right back, seeing as there's 3-4 kicking about at the club now. We'll go through some of the areas in the squad. The panel thinks there should be simple improvements on the field. We'll get the guys' thoughts on where Bajrami fits in. Something Ross said on Sunday really stuck with me, that we're making too many short-term decisions and not enough long-term decisions in the pitch. We'll get the guys' thoughts on some of those as well. And then the small matter of Dundee United at the weekend. We'll give you first, John. Late last night, front runner in the Rangers CEO position, Jim Gillespie, St Mirren, seemed to remove themselves from the shortlist. What do you make of this whole scenario, and what do you make of the fact that the CEO position has been empty since the 30th of May?
Yeah, it's a bit mental to me that the CEO position's been vacant whilst a managerial contract's been given out. I feel like that's where the club's disconnect seems to fall apart and start from me, decisions like that. I didn't know much about Jim Gillespie before he was linked, and then started looking into him. I feel like it's a bit of a sounding board to see what the reaction's going to be to somebody like that. To me, it's just mental. The whole thing. It's another example, like we always say. And to be fair, Celtic are no different. The clubs only communicate when they want you to buy something. They're not interested in communicating with fans unless it's a new kit or a new signing that you're going to be engaged with. It's just, that's what it is. This is a perfect time for a club to be communicating what's actually happening, and it's just not.
Yeah, Kyran, I'll ask a similar question of yourself as well. This just seems to be Rangers sort of shooting themselves in the foot again. John Bennett, only was it even the end a couple of months ago, came out and said that the CEO position was very, very close to being filled. I think that might have been July that interview was. And now this. Firstly, do you agree with what John said there in terms of not the information being leaked, but have the fans been used as a bit of a sounding board to see what their thoughts and feelings are on appointing a guy from St Mirren?
Possibly. I can see both sides of it. I can see the side that, yes, okay, they'd get the opinion of the fans, but has that ever mattered any time before when it comes to the decisions of this board?
No.
To be honest, I think I was quite vocal in our chat about it after the Old Firm game, was saying that, look, the club are looking to appoint Jim Gillespie, and I didn't feel it was the right appointment. Now, listen, I don't know too much about him. I only know what's out there. And for me, it just didn't tick the boxes which we should be ticking. Now, you've got to be thinking, we've cut back massively on a wage bill. There's money there to be spent. And aside from the first team manager, I can't see any more important a position where we need to be throwing money at it than the CEO. Our club needs ripped open from the inside out and just completely rebuilt and run in a way that it should be run, because I think this has been on the cards for a while, and there's obviously a few charlatans behind the scenes that need found out and need gutted out of the club. I think that's fair to say for anybody that reads Twitter. So it needs to be somebody that comes in and has authority, knows a bit about Rangers. And I know we'll get on to what we think should be the prime candidate for this. But again, we don't live in a world where we know these people who basically take these jobs, if you know what I mean. We only know football, so we're not exactly business-minded. When it comes to this position, it has to be somebody that knows Rangers well, knows Scottish football and the lay of the land, because you've seen how tough it was for Stuart Robinson when he was in terms of fighting SFA with internal independent investigations and things like that. So we are a bit of a niche in terms of a football club, but that is a high-pressure job. So for me, whether he stepped down or whether we stepped away from the appointment's a whole different story, and there's probably a lot going on there that we don't know about. But I really, really hope that we get this one right.
Yeah, it's an appointment. I mean, I feel like I've been saying this for the whole 3 years that I've been on the podcast. It's an appointment we have to get right. So, we just play that on repeat as well. But John, I'll ask you this question. It's what qualities should Rangers be looking for in a CEO? And like the thing that always makes me laugh is when I was going through a lot of social media today is they must have experience at a big club and they must have experience in Scottish football. And that either means it's going to be a former CEO from Rangers or a CEO from the other side of the city, and that's not going to go down too well. So what sort of things must a CEO have at a club the size of Rangers?
To be honest, I think it's understanding what a football philosophy has to look like needs to be the starting point. I think it's more important that the person's football-minded than business-minded. A lot of the stuff a CEO does by putting a good product on the pitch will take care of a lot of the issues that a business CEO would have to deal with. For me, it's what... I know it's kind of blurring lines between sporting director and CEO, but it's what... If I think of like two dynasties, well, going into a third now, if I think of... is it Siki Bukiristan that went from Barcelona to City? It was City's biggest appointment they made. He came into Man City, changed the whole club, the whole academy's changed. Yes, Guardiola's come in and helped with that, but everything underneath that's creating all the youngsters that are coming through that are fit for purpose for their team has been done from his experience at Barcelona. AC Milan had the same CEO from 1986 through to 2003 when they won the Champions League 4 times. They had pretty much successive players through that Baresi era, through to Maldini, all the way through, in a very similar type of team. You could identify what AC Milan looked like for most of that time. They had peaks and troughs, but they pretty much were the same club the whole time. I think that's what we need first. And this is the... See, when you're building, everyone's got this idea of what you should build as a football team in your head, and everyone thinks that the playing style and all that in modern football, that we all seem to agree on this, but we seem to over-exaggerate. See if you have an identity like Barcelona do, like Man City now do, and your academy does off the back of that, it makes it really easy to appoint managers that doesn't disrupt the whole unity. We do this thing where we change manager, then go to the academy need to match the manager. No, the manager needs to match the club, and the club's ethos needs to be put down by a CEO, and that CEO needs to understand what he wants to see on the pitch and through the academy, so that whether we hire Clement, Van Bronckhorst, Beale, Gerrard, Kashinya, Warburton, it doesn't matter. You're interviewing somebody that's fit for purpose to do Rangers philosophy and carry out Rangers philosophy, not a manager that's coming in to deliver his philosophy. That needs to go away, and that's what our problem is. We then do this. They need a whole new backroom staff. We then want to mess about with the academy. They then want to mess about with the scouting. All of that should be done by the CEO, and then the manager just fits into that one position, and he's not as important anymore. So it's somebody that does that, and I'm hoping that's what the club are trying to do. But to me, the CEO is the one that's organising all this. So see, not having a CEO, who interviews the boss? Like this is what I can't quite get my head around. It's a board of directors that we don't seem to trust, and we seem to think don't have a football brain in there. So how do they know who to appoint? And that's, I guess, why we're 4 months down the line without a CEO.
Well, that's it, exactly. You raised some fantastic points in there, and this is the most galling thing about the whole situation to me, is the blueprint for success is there, and it has been, and it's not just in one club. It's at clubs that are at much bigger level than us, but even if you look down the leagues, like there is examples of those things a philosophy being put in place. Brighton is the one that I go back to. As you said, they bring managers in to fit their philosophy. I mean, guys we've never heard of, and I wish Rangers would do a bit more of that sort of stuff.
Kyle, Celtic are doing this. This is the frustrating thing. See, even if you want to go back to Ronnie Dyla, he had a philosophy of football that fits Celtic. Brendan Rodgers came in and that fits Celtic. The only appointment Celtic have done wrong has been giving Neil Lennon the job in the last decade. It's the only one they've got wrong, was Neil Lennon being appointed the manager. Apart from that, everything else has seemed to match what Celtic were meant to be doing. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, as you said, the blueprint for success is there. We need to be following it. I'll come to yourself, Kyran. Ian McCutcheon here says, Adrian Bevington gave a good description of what you should be looking for in a CEO. Again, is this the type of sort of candidate that Rangers should be looking at? I'm always a bit wary when somebody goes pretty publicly about, wanting to go into a job in football, but he's been managing director of England, Middlesbrough, advisor to Wales when they got to the Euros in 2016, communications director at the FA, seems to be really, really well connected. This seems to be more the profile that we should be looking at, rather than somebody with no disrespect to St Mirren, but for St Mirren.
I think it's of no coincidence that Adrian Bevington's name's come about the same week that we've been told Jim Gillespie's now out of the running. So that can only be positive. Again, ticks the boxes, involved in football, has been involved at a high level, involved in the English FA. It's I don't know too much about him. Am I right in saying he brought out a book or a documentary about the fall and the rise of Middlesbrough under him?
Yep.
So again, I think the Evening Times actually reported today that there had been initial contact made with Bevington, so he's definitely involved in the running for this position somehow. But it's incredible that we're now 4 months down the line. Do you know that? Because we're Glasgow Rangers, we're one of the biggest clubs in the world, and folks should be falling over themselves to get that job. But they must look at the tobacco that's gone on in the hierarchy and on the board at Rangers and think, I want nothing to do with that. There was a great point made in a thread, I can't remember by who, yesterday on Twitter, and it was talking about the CEO position. I think this was before it was announced that Gillespie was out of the running. And it basically said, we can't have a yes man in there that's just going to nod and say aye and agree with what the board want to do, because they've made far too many costly errors for us to go like that. We need someone that's going to come in and stand on their own 2 feet and stamp their own authority on the club. And the likes of Bevington, when I talk about that Middlesbrough experience, where they have been up, they've come back down, he's come in there and sort of brought them back up to where they should be. Let's be honest, Middlesbrough are a big club, not as big as us, but they should be a Premier League club. So that type of experience, still working in football as well. So he's an interesting candidate.
Yeah, I'm sure he's working for some footballing agency over in Germany at the minute, which is, when I heard that, I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, there's a few comments coming in here. William N01 says, no, don't want him anywhere near the club pimping himself to Keith Jackson. Colin Matthews says in another pod, Bevington and the guy's made his money elsewhere. He knows what he's doing. And Ian McCutcheon says, I was not saying AJ Bevington should get the job, but what a great description of the qualities in CEO. She said, and that's totally fine. But it's someday more of that standard. Listen, Kyran, I'll stick with you here for the next sort of part of the podcast here as well. I've got to ask, because it happened last night, we sort of touched on it. There's not really much been said about it. But there was the Rangers Charity Foundation hosted a Q&A at New Edison House last night, where I was at the weekend for a beer festival, which was really, really good. So if it's on next year, I thoroughly recommend people go and just you can't beat it, a wee beer and looking at Ibrox. But there was nothing too explosive in there from that night. Hardly, as I said, hardly heard a thing from it. But what were your thoughts on the timing of this?
Oh God, man! I had the absolute fear when I seen it come out, because you just know how things are at the moment and what people could put forward. As far as I've sort of read online, the questions were filtered towards Clement, which is fair. It's a charity night. It's not the night for acting like it's the AGM. So. Now, it all seems very fair. I think one thing that did come out is that he says, yeah, we can still win the league. So thank God he's saying that in September. But no, apparently Alex Ray was pretty candid. Clement answered pretty much everything thrown at him, as I say, albeit filtered. But it's nice to see these nights on. But you were saying in the group chat, Kyle, that you've bought tickets for the 70s night, haven't you?
Yeah.
Back in the Emerson house, mate.
That's it, man. I'm growing the moustache, growing the hair out long for it. Getting a few fashion tips off Tommy, and I'll deal with that one later on as well. But listen, we'll ask you the next sort of question here, John. The Scottish FA introduced, and I don't know why. Like, I almost found this quite funny. Like, just compared to the way other nations have done it, and just the fact that we've got a show that's going to be on YouTube explaining this stuff. But they said on their socials, a new monthly show, behind the scenes insight with match day audio. We'll discuss, decisions from the previous month and whether they were right or wrong. You look at a lot of analysis, a lot of video footage back and all that stuff. I mean, you must see things regularly back and go, what the hell? What was the ref thinking even at that time? Do you think this is a good idea, or should we be criticising the SFA for, on paper, doing something that's quite progressive and something fans have been asking for?
I love it. I think I went back and looked at my Scots Abroad. I've had about 7 or 8 tweets about this exact subject since I seen the MLS doing it 2 years ago. French football do it, German football do it. German football interview the refs after the games sometimes and go over their decisions through the games. So, I would say what we're doing is already 2 years behind what 7 other leagues are doing, and the other leagues are already advanced in what they want to do, because the feedback, and this is typical Scottish football, this is honestly, it's a great step, I like it, but it's already, if you're going to do it now, you should do the next thing, which is not a monthly show, because you have too much time to sit down and go through what kind of message you want to send out, and it seems too planned. Problem you've got is Willie Collum, although he's good at explaining the decisions, I still felt like Thomas Duncan, didn't really push on anything. It was very kind of, all right, okay, cool, that one was the wrong decision, sound, let's move on to the next one. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be an exact decision next month. It's going to be the same problem we just discussed, and he's going to do the same thing, because if he doesn't play ball, it's the same with the questions to Clement, it's the same with the questions to Steve Clark in press conferences. If Thomas Duncan and his production company don't play ball doing the interviews with Willie Collum, the show will disappear and stop being done, or they'll get someone else who will play ball and ask non-hard-hitting questions. It should be a weekly show. It should be done up front. It should be every decision, because that's Willie Collum's job now. And then we should be judging it week to week on what the referees are improving on, because there's going to be the same scenarios every week for these referees to make decisions on.
I think we've got to take on board here that it's Scottish football, which every single word a referee puts out there is going to be open to scrutiny, and all the loonies that like to write blogs about other people's teams that isn't their own are going to be all over this. So the fact that it's a monthly thing might be something to start off with, but week to week would be a car crash, I think. It's just where we are as a country and how we treat the referees. Bear in mind, part-time referees, and we're now making a show on their decisions in VAR, is it's murky waters. I just don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how long it's going to last. It'd be interesting to see if it does last until the end of the season, but like you guys, glad to see a bit of progression in Scottish football and sort of going with the initiative and being a bit more transparent. But I know that the footage was released there and the audio of the VAR for our goal against St Johnstone. You've got to look at it in the sense that it's got to the right decision, albeit the referee gets it wrong in the pitch, but we've seen that from him before, that he's relied on VAR. I don't know if that's the way they're instructed to do things nowadays, that use it as a fallback to make sure they get to the right decision, which I don't know where I stand on that, but in terms of the decision itself, we got to the right decision. There was no controversy with the VAR, but it's quite revealing that they didn't do this with the VAR of last season's Old Firm at Parkhead, where the Sima handball incident was all of a sudden offside.
No comment on that one. I'm sure that's what the SFA would have said as well. RFC72 here says probably the best thing the SFA's done with the referees. Random Madness should be fined for buying the game into dispute. And William One says we've not even got goal line technology yet.
Can I jump in? Goal line technology doesn't work. Honestly, this is the one for me. Goal line technology is the biggest scam that we've been sold on. There is a discrepancy within goal line technology, and folk just accept that. So see all those tight decisions. Those tight decisions could still be wrong. So goal line technology doesn't even work, and everyone uses that to be the one that Scottish football for once is right not to pay money for goal line technology for the lack of decisions that actually impacts on a yearly basis and the money that's in the league for it not to work. It makes sense in the Premier League. Because that 1 millimetre of a goal could make a difference between a team staying up or not, and that could be like £20 million. So I understand it there. We're right actually not to pay for that. Somebody told me that in an analysis course, and I went and Googled it, and it's absolutely accurate. Goal line technology is not accurate.
Oh, well, there we go. Goal line technology in the bin. But Kieran, I'll come to you with us next week sort of question here. So in terms of this VAR show, the biggest thing is, of the biggest criticisms that refs face is it's not that they're cheats or they're biased. It's just that I think the consensus in the whole of Scottish football is they're not very good at their jobs. Genuinely, is a show like this going to hold them to more accountability? Will this make a difference? And I think, I can't remember the comment, was it William O'One here? It says the VAR show will scare future refs away from the profession. What do you think of that? And I'll start with you, Kieran.
Yeah, I'm right in saying, I think John said it. Is it Willie Collum being interviewed on the decision?
Yeah.
We're failing already. It's Willie Collum. We're talking about Willie Collum here, getting interviewed on getting decisions correct. Where is it YouTube or Comedy Central it's on? Jesus Christ,
Willie Collum's actually a lot better at analysing other people's decisions than he seems to have ever been at making decisions, which is quite interesting.
I just don't know. I just don't know how this is going to go, to be honest. It's a funny one for me. I'd like to see it not just Willie Collum. I'd like to see it, you know, you get like Dermot Gallagher on Sky Sports News, and even I know I've just mentioned Willie Collum there, but Bobby Madden tends to do a good job of explaining things on Instagram, and you've also got the gents behind the podcast at Behind the Whistle that are quite vocal on Twitter as well, and they can be quite fair. So it would be good if it wasn't just Willie Collum, because you know how that's going to go. See
when I seen it, Kieran, I actually thought, when I seen, sorry, it's Gordon Duncan, I called him Thomas Duncan there.
You called him like Michael and fucking Davey, I know.
See, when I see Gordon Duncan was doing interviews, Bobby Madden was the person I exactly thought of, because he's a former ref. I think if you move away from, okay, being Willie Collum the first time, but see if you maybe had like another ref on that's actually been in one of the decisions to discuss what Willie Collum has explained to them about a wrong decision that they made, they would be more comfortable speaking to Bobby Madden. And I think Bobby Madden's got a decent personality. I actually thought Bobby Madden would have been the perfect host for it, because you know what it's like with footballers. It's why Cy Ferry and Open Goal were so good to start with. It's because footballers felt comfortable speaking to a former footballer when they were doing interviews, and it got that extra level. I actually think exactly that. I think Bobby Madden would be brilliant to be the host of this and push this, and actually talk to refs and get the refs on that are actually being subjected to incorrect decisions. Because the question there was, will it scare people away from the profession? See if you get the refs in front of camera and make them answer to their decisions, and then probably get feedback from people like us that go, well, at least they're coming forward and explaining what happened and then what they're working towards to eradicate it or make themselves better. Or then we can't even moan at people. We're like, oh well, they're kind of transparent now and explaining what happened, and people make mistakes. And that's always been the go-to. People make mistakes, so why not just own up to it? And that was always the kind of starting point for me. So as long as it's no Willie Collum every month, I would like to see an actual ref come on and talk about the decision.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point you made there, and from first-hand experience, that Bobby Madden does have a good personality. He would be the perfect person to host something like that, and I think, as you said, it would make them much more comfortable. But I'm not sure Willie Collum's ego is going to let somebody with a bit more knowledge in the same room as him, because we've all seen how he talks to players on that pitch. But listen, let's get talking about Rangers and the squad and the team specifically now, because we've got the small matter of returning to league action at the weekend. Kieran, I'll begin with you on this one. Obviously, the sort of podcast, the title of the podcast, centred around the Rangers right back dilemma. What do we do, given that Clement's had 2 weeks to work with the squad? There's been a handful of players away in international duty. But firstly, before we get to that, Rangers have had 7 games this year. Tav's started in all 7 of them. He's had a lot of criticism already this year. Do you agree with that criticism? What's your thoughts on how James Tavernier, the club captain, started this season?
I think he started where he left off last season, and it's absolutely no surprise that his output was keeping him in the team offensively, and we've not really seen that. I think he's got 2 assists this year so far in 7 games. For me, he had to be moved on in the summer. I've said it time and time again, it's a sad way that he'll go from Rangers and he won't be remembered as fondly as what he should be. But I think it is time that he should move on. I think the Turkish and the Saudi windows are still open until next week, so there might still be movement on that. But in terms of, I didn't agree with the criticism as in what he was approached with in the street outside Ibrox after the Old Firm game. I think that's completely bang out. But in terms of Tav in that game, in that specific Old Firm game, it was everything we thought it would be. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't his fault. There wasn't plus marks for many, if any, whatsoever. But it was everything we expected. We need something fresh in there. We've just signed the boy. Sorry, forgive me if you're waiting on me saying this.
We've been waiting, man.
Kasanwirjo.
We'll go. I think that's a good attempt as any, man.
If anybody can tell us the proper pronunciation in the comments, that would be great, and we'll all give it a go. So he can play right back as far as we know, albeit we've not seen him play. Sterling, for me, is our right back for the next few years, at least. He needs to play in his position of right back. I remember being lucky enough to be his unveiling, representing this as Ibrox, and when he was posed about the question, are you here to play centre-back? And he said, I'm not a centre-back. I play right back or I play left back. And since then, we've seen him play something like 5 or 6 different positions. He's good enough to nail that position down and make it his own. Now, let's not kid ourselves. We're not going to get the offensive output that Tav gave us, but I don't think you'll get that from any right back. So the expectations have got to be extremely low there. That's got to be expected from our front players, which we've not seen so far. So for me, it's about time that Tav's rotated out and not rotated back in. Like we were promised at the start of the season by Clement that he would be rotated because he doesn't have the legs to play 60 games a season. I know he's had a 2-week break, but it's time to go with quality in there, albeit I don't think we'll see that come Sunday.
And just quickly before I get John's thoughts on this, Emu Cutchin says Turkey window closes this Friday, 13th. Unlucky for us. Say a bid did come in from Besiktas, would you accept it?
They need to make a decision on Tavernier like now, whether he's the club captain or whether he's been sold. There can't be in between. There can't be a phase now at James Tavernier. It needs to be a hard stop. It needs to be sold or he keeps playing. Like there's no in between for me. He gets paid too much money. He's the face of the club. He plays every game, or he's sold to a Turkish team before this starts. For me, I'm with Kyran. I think we're seeing a decline in Tavernier. It's very clear. This isn't the same issues that we had before. We're seeing an actual decline in him. He's turning 33. No fullback. Fullbacks don't peak at this age. Footballers don't peak at this age. It doesn't matter how many camps he goes on to Dubai during pre-season to keep himself ticking over. There's a natural decline, and what we've asked him to do continually is not available anymore. It's probably why we're inverting him so much and stopping him getting up and down the pitch because he doesn't have it. Sterling will not contribute the goals, but no right back that we could go sign will contribute the goal contribution that James Tavernier does. Alistair Johnston across the city has got 7 goal involvements in 2 years, and he's won 2 titles. It doesn't matter what these fullbacks contribute as long as the forward players are doing their job. So I think I'm on the boat of Tavernier needs to be sold and Sterling needs to play his position. And if Sterling gets injured because he's not proven himself to be fit regularly, we do have another option that can play right back, although it's not his preferred position.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments coming in here. Clarence Bergman says, didn't agree with the hate that our captain got back at the stadium. For me, that was the club's fault. Edmonton House was open and support were handy for abuse. For me, only Barron for pass marks. Random Madness says he needs to go, but we can still get a fee for him. And RFC 72 says 35k a week saved if we sell him, and that's about 1.5 to 2 million a year. Kieran, it's late in the, our window is shut. It's getting pretty late for the Turkish transfer window. Obviously, we know that Van Bronckhorst is over at Besiktas. That would likely be the place he would end up. Do you think it's madness selling him, given that I suppose we have 2 replacements in there, or would you rather keep a hold of Tav at this point?
I'm right in saying this is the reason that Newcastle wouldn't let Trippier go to Turkey, because they said it's just our window's closed, we can't find a replacement, and at this point it's just not doable. So it is a tough one. It's probably happened all at the wrong time. I'd be interested to see how far down the line the interest was it Trabzonspor that were in for him at the start of the window, or around at the mid of the window? And then things sort of went quiet, and then he was back in the team starting against Birmingham away in pre-season, and since then there's been little to no interest whatsoever. It's a shame, and I'll be sorry to see him go when it does happen, but for now it's got to be what's best for the team, and I think we're all in agreement that it's got to be Sterling. It's got to be someone a bit pacier in there. I mean, it reminds me back to Javi Zanetti, that famous night he came up against Bale, and it was almost like, right, Zanetti's done, glittering career, but he's come up against a young guy here that's absolutely tore him to shreds. And after that game, it was kind of downhill. Now, I'll probably get misquoted, and that's my knowledge of Zanetti in Italian football is not of the highest, but it kind of reminds me of that, where you've got a player that's just done well all his career. He's got a great reputation, and the legs just don't seem to be there anymore. Father Time waits for no man. Very much the case with Tavernier.
No, you're absolutely spot on there as well. And John, just before we sort of move on to a wee bit of discussion, maybe between Sterling and Kasanwirjo as well, but do you think that not the squad, but Rangers, like when we've been playing, could have been doing more to help Tav? Like the example that I'm talking about is during when we were playing St Johnstone, you saw Sterling moving from the centre of the pitch and covering Tav, and he was going a lot more central. During that Old Firm game, we just saw none of that at all. Whenever Maeda was running down that wing, especially in that Old Firm, I was expecting us to at least double up. There was just nothing like that. Is it just a case that if Tav does stay, we should expect him to play, but there needs to be tweaks on the pitch to help him, basically?
Clement won't make any tweaks. Clement doesn't do anything tactical. Clement doesn't do anything informative of analysis on this team. It's that embarrassing. The club's that badly run. The manager's that poorly equipped for this job. There'll be no changes to what he does. The players go out clearly with mixed understanding as to what the job is, what the roles are on the pitch. It's very clear that that's what's happening. So what seems obvious to us is the solutions that Rangers put in place before to protect Tavernier under Gerrard. That's the obvious thing. Changing the press is the obvious thing. These are all obvious things that would help Tavernier, that would stop things happening. But it won't change. That won't change. That'll be someone's own doing and off-the-cuff decision-making. If Czerny plays and gets himself up to full fitness and is able to then start getting up and down the pitch and double up, that'll be because he decided. If Sterling doubles up, that'll be because Sterling decided at that moment in the match. That's what they do, especially in Old Firms. We ask our midfield three to follow the man that they're marking. There's a man marking press in the Old Firm, which is why you see such huge gaps between Barron, Sterling, Diomande, is because they're told to follow their man. They're not told to follow his own. So those are directions from the manager. So nothing will change for Tavernier. And I suspect, actually, because of Dyson Maida's quality and pace, whichever right back we send out there, it's almost like a poison chalice, and you need to have a perfect game against Dyson Maida, because he is, I keep saying this, he's a bit of a cheat code. Like, see that goal that Tavernier's at fault for? Maida's 8 yards behind him, and within a split second, he's in front of him. Barron almost like standing on Maida. I don't really know what you do in that scenario with somebody that moves that quickly. I actually don't know.
I think you need to be more aggressive in that situation. There's got to be contact. You've got to engage with the man coming in at the back post. I know he's quick and things happen up very, very fast in the game, but I think in that situation, you've got to be more aggressive and get to the man. Go and meet him rather than waiting him.
But then I think, Kieran, see if he because the speed that Maida moves it, I think if he makes any half step to get closer, it gets flashed across the 6-yard box and Maida taps it in around the back post. I honestly think it's that. I just think he's an anomaly. This isn't a Bada coming inside the Barisic when Barisic is almost on his knees. I just think this is somebody who's like a bit of an anomaly. It's like the Kiev goal that Suter was at fault for. Suter was kind of protected so that he didn't have anyone come across his face. And then he's got somebody around the back of him and it's in. You're like, sometimes you're kind of going, I don't know what the right thing to do is when somebody's kind of that quick to move, but I'm going off point. There'll be no tactical changes. No.
I think on the point about...
All hope dead.
Sorry, Kyle. I think on the point about helping Tav out, we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be poor that other players need to help someone out that has been struggling for the past year at his own position. Like, we should be better than that. We should be better equipped than that, but we're not.
No, but we're absolutely not at all. Another comment here from Random Madness that says, a formation is too rigid. Players have no freedom. John, I'll come to you in this one. It's something I've been thinking myself. Seen a lot of chat on it, especially in the socials today as well, about this formation and that we're too rigid. We all know that Rangers, like our Clement, likes to play this 4-2-3-1. Rarely since he's come in has changed from it. We might have seen some out of off the ball phases of play where he's dropped into a 4-4-2. But do you feel that this 4-2-3-1 formation gets the best out of the players that we have at the team? Do we need to be more? Because that was something that Clement said when he came in. He's like, I don't have a style. I adapt to the opposition. But I've just not seen that. I feel like I've just not seen that.
So it's probably a bad example right in this second, but Russell Martin was talking at an SFA event during the summer about Southampton and went through his analysis and what he focuses on week to week. And he was like, we always only focus on ourselves because it's the only thing I can control and coach. I don't do too much analysis in the opposition. It's not worth my time because I could spend a full week looking at their footage and then they play something different against us. And all that week's been wasted that I could have worked on one players. For me, unless it's like an elite European match or an old firm, Rangers should not be focused on anyone other than themselves. There shouldn't be any adaptation for Dundee United. There shouldn't be any adaptation for Aberdeen. There should be us having a set style of play and having players that carry out that instruction to the letter of the law. The problem about those instructions clearly aren't clear because we can put different players in that team and the team look very different and the style look very different. So it's all, I honestly, people probably are sick to death of us saying this in this podcast. The days of a manager trying to come forward and say don't have a style of play is dead. That there and then, those days are over. You need to have something that you're working towards. And you need to have it so that every player can come in and it be perfect. Because what's going to happen is Bajrami looks like a really good player. So I expect that 10 position to be better now. Czerny is a much better player than Ross McCausland and Scott Wright. So our right wing position is already better. Those areas are good. Diamond and Barron in midfield or whatever scenario, whatever combination he does. Problem I have is if Bajrami gets injured or Czerny gets injured, the team will change. And the quality in the team, it's not the same style of team. Ross McCausland isn't going to be able to do what Czerny can do with the ball. So you'll instantly go, whereas Celtic can kind of bring in Coon for James Forrest and it'd be the same Celtic side. Maida can go into centre mid and Lewis Palmer come into centre forward and Lewis Palmer go to left wing and it's the same Celtic team. It doesn't change with the personnel. Ours will go from beating Hearts 5-0 in February to losing a 6-point lead over Celtic because you can't beat Ross County, Motherwell or Dundee.
Yeah, no, that is some truth spoken there by John Walker. So some harsh realities as well. Kieran, the comments coming in here are Clarence Bergman says 3-4-1-2. That for me is a start in progress. We've been holding Tav's hand every time we come up against Celtic. I'm not sure about that part. William Owen said I would play a 3-4-1-2. William Kerr says a 3-4-1-2 as well, and then William N01 comes back says the two Willies want a 3-4-1-2. So there we go. What do you think about this as well? Is that a formation that Rangers, do you think, should adapt to? Is it something that you would like to see? do you think Clement is? As John just said, they're far too or rigid with his formation, and it needs to be a bit more flexible.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's part of the reason why Cantwell's out the door, because he wanted that sort of free role in the 10, whereas I feel like Clement wants a more disciplined player in there who plays exactly how he wants them to play. I don't know what that is, to be honest, but when we look at probably one of the only times it stands out that he changed the formation, his hand was forced. I think it was his second game in charge away to Sparta Prague when we played 3 at the back and Sima was left wing back famously, and we were actually all right with 3 at the back. I know we're going back about a year now, or less than a year, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, where do you try that though? Like, where do you try that? At home to Dundee or something? I'm not quite sure, but I don't think we would be too badly suited to going a 3-4-3 playing with a 10 and 2 up front or something like that. We're equipped with Dessers and Igamani up front and Danilo when he comes back, so there's no reason why we shouldn't really try to play a 2 up front. The only thing that might get me is, are we equipped with guys that could play full-back? I know on the left, Ridvan and Yefte, I'd say, yeah, they could. On the right, I'm not so sure. You've got somebody like Sterling defensively who's excellent, Tavernier who's not very good at either at the moment, and the new lad's a bit of the unknown. So for me, if you were to play with wing backs, you've really got to have the personnel, and I don't think we've got that at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really difficult to see where the squad is at the minute, especially with the feeling around the club at the minute. But you know, it was something I touched on it earlier on. It was something Ross said at the weekend, and it was just you could apply this to off the pitch, on the pitch, and it is Rangers are making too many short-term decisions, and that we need our decisions that are for the short term, and we need to be making more decisions for the long term. John, in terms of on the pitch, what sort of long-term position or long-term decisions do you think that Rangers need to be making? Like, as a support, are we just going to have to accept that we're going to see guys like, you know, Barron, Cortez, Igaman in this squad week in, week out, even if they're not performing to the, you know, the most because they are young players? Or is it just that, what do we have to do? What long-term decisions does the manager have to focus on in terms of the playing squad?
So I think some of the signings and the age of the signings are key. I know we've made some more experienced signings on loan, but the age of some of the signings we've made, you've mentioned Hefty, Barron, Diomande, Igamani, Cortez. These are young footballers that we obviously think can add value to Rangers later on. So I think the recruitment on that part is probably good to build us forward. I think Sterling can be added to that as well because he's young enough to go on and have a decent career. The issue I've got is Philippe Clement does not have a proven track record for producing youth players and selling them on for big money. He just doesn't. The ones that have really stood out from his time was Charles de Cletera, but he was earmarked long before he went to Club Brugge. He was earmarked as being a special player. My concern's that is the players that we want to get in front of English Premier League suitors are only going to get there because of numbers rather than necessarily performances, I think is how I feel. It's not quite the Matt O'Reilly impact. It's probably going to be a Igamani getting really high numbers like Sima did in that position that would impress suitors. That's my concern on the pitch, is how do we get those players without a playing style, without a clear continuous identity that wouldn't be impacted by 1 or 2 injuries to other positions. So Hefty's performances might drop because the number 10 is no longer looking as good at Rangers, or because Tom Lawrence has come back in the team. Like, that's the detrimental impact. So when we do say about not having a style of play is important, it's because it can be detrimental to the whole team. I think the inclusion of those young players was really important for us, but we need them to all kind of have class seasons and us to start winning trophies for the when Patterson and Bassey went kind of 2-3 windows within each other, I felt like we'd got it right. I was like, yep, it seems like the recruitment thing's starting here. We could start building on this. I think Tillman was probably the next one we hoped we would get in the door and be able to do the same with. Hadji injury probably robbed us of doing that. I felt like it was there, but I feel like now we're back to the start again, trying to identify these youngsters that we can go and sell on for big money and then start the ball rolling and keeping this going.
I think this rounds back to the first question about the CEO. Like, there's been no continuity since the sort of Stuart Robertson, Mark Allen era, where we were making these sort of signings, and then Ross Wilson was brought in after Mark Allen left, and just churned out an absolute disaster that we're now cleaning the mess up for. So it is. I think this comes back to having that hierarchy that just keeps a constant flow at the club, regardless of who comes and goes, and that's why you need to throw big money at a CEO, a proper CEO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And listen, Kieran, I'll ask a similar question of you. Like, are we just going to have to accept that, you know, these guys that John's mentioned are going to be in the team because of their age, that, you know, they are going to have off games every now and again? Is this just the season that we're going to have to strap ourselves in for? Because that's one of the, not the first time, but like I've had a proper look at the squad and seen where we are, and it's just, you just can't help but feel it's light. And whenever you're looking at the ages, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, that's obviously been two of the goals of the board this summer, is to reduce the wage bill and reduce the age, or the average age of the player that's at the squad. They have done both of those things, but could it be? I mean, I know Clement said last night that he still feels we're in, you know, can win the title race, but could this be just the season that we've got to strap ourselves in for?
Oh, absolutely. The squad is light. It's very light. We've not spent anywhere near the money that we should in which to compete. But we need to concentrate on ourselves at the moment. And I don't know, maybe personally, I like seeing young players getting a chance. I think they will make mistakes. We've got to expect that. I know we won't expect that because that's just life as a Rangers fan. But the likes of Igamani, the likes of Cortez, Jefte, Barron, we've all been quite impressed with what we've seen so far. So why not? Give them their chance, let them go out and make mistakes and learn the game and what it's like to play at the top level. And who knows, you might just have a lottery ticket in there that's going to make you a lot of money. But again, though, that comes with success. So we've got to be challenging on all fronts. So we are a project that's in place at the moment, but I'd like to see more high-profile younger signings come in if we're to be progressive like that. I know we mentioned Bassey and Patterson, but what we've done with the money in terms of replacing them just wasn't good enough, and that's where we've tripped up, and it's now starting to hurt us.
Yeah, and listen, this is a point I'll endorse all day long as well, is this: get Bailey Rice play more. If I see Dowell getting picked over him, I swear, and I totally agree, because that was a perplexing decision at the St Johnstone game when we were 4-0 up. But listen, let's try and move on to a bit of positivity in terms of that, where somebody's going to come into the squad. And John, I've been waiting to have you on to ask about this guy, because, you know, there really looks to be a bit of player in there, and that's Nedim Bajrami. When he comes into the squad, where does he fit into this? Is it literally just a case of Tom Lawrence doesn't play as much and Bajrami goes right in that 10 position?
That's it. There's nothing changes. It's the only position he can play for this team, and he's been identified because he's got individual quality and he's more mobile than Tom Lawrence. I think on the ball he's probably got better quality, but Tom Lawrence 5 years ago had that amount of quality in him. But yeah, I think it's just that he plays in the number 10. You've got a more mobile 10, somebody that he obviously believes has got the technical attributes that Philippe Clement wants in that position. Yeah, it's a 10. He's going to play in that role. It's going to be the same for Rangers. It's going to be the same frustrations we have with the press not getting backed up. It's going to be the same frustrations we have without the ball. But on the ball, I think we've got somebody who's probably more Clement's type of 10 than Cantwell ever was, and Lawrence is capable of being.
Yeah, and maybe this is more to the point. Random Madness here says he will need 6 weeks to train before he can play. Kieran, he's got to be put in, maybe not from the start at the weekend, but he has to be play. Are you a bit more excited than John to see him coming in? And I'm just looking forward to just having somebody different in that role, because I mean, obviously we know Hadji's not going to be there, Cantwell's not for Clement didn't cut it at that role. Tom Lawrence isn't cutting it for a lot of Rangers fans at the minute. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and claim to be an expert in Albanian football and know everything about Bajrami, but like he does seem to be, from the clips that I have seen, just offer something a bit different in that 10 role. So what do you think about that?
For where we are here and now, it's been quite an outlay for him. It was €4 million was paid for him, £4 million. So I'd like to see him go straight in there, because let's be honest, this is a potential banana skin that could really knock us right off the rails. Just think of the reaction, compare it to after that Old Firm game there. Like, we need to go and win this game. For me, Bajrami goes straight into that 10. Lawrence got dropped the last game, so there's no guarantees he goes straight back in here. Sterling didn't work at the 6. I can't see Clement making too many changes. That's the only thing. So for me, Bajrami comes in for Sterling, because I just don't think he'll drop Tav and he won't drop Dessers. So for me, Bajrami comes in for Sterling, goes straight into that 10 and just shows what you've got. We're desperate for something to cling on to, and he could be the man. I know we spoke at length about Igmani after the game at Parkhead. Just that wee glimmer of light. We need something positive to hold on to. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. I hope he starts at the weekend. I hope Clement can be a bit more progressive in terms of his squad selection. Do I think it'll happen? I think that's a different question. I don't.
I know. God, there was me trying to be positive about our new £3.5 million number 10 signing, but it's just.
He's going to win the league. How's that, Kyle? Is that a bit better, mate?
Right, get up, cut his mic. He's delusional. Get him off. Clarence Bergman here says Hadji was brilliant with Romania in midweek. It's sickening why he ain't in the squad, but that's the manager for you. RFC72 says I watch a lot of Northland. Oh, that's the wrong comment for before. Sorry, it's Ross here says he's been bought for 3.5 million and played back-to-back international games. He's ready to play. Throw him in. I'll give the support and team a much needed lift. John, before let's just move on to the Dundee United game, I suppose. A team, obviously we know from them from before, they were relegated last year under Jim Goodwin, the backup. What are the strengths that we should be looking for in Dundee United? How are they going to play against us, and how should we? I was going to say set up, but we already know how we're going to set up against them, don't we?
Yeah, it'll be a difficult one because Dundee United have been a wee bit more expansive against the teams they've played so far. They've been lucky to catch St Mirren and Hearts after European trips as well. I think this is one of these potential banana skins because they'll be organised. There'll be two banks. There'll be a 3 and a 5 or a 3-4-1 banked in front of the box, and they'll try and hit us on the counter. And they do have pace now. I'm not even going to try and butcher his name, but the Macedonian boy is quite talented. I've liked the look at him from the Dundee Derby and the Hearts game that I've seen the highlights of. But they're very much just a Jim Goodwin side still. They'll be a very low block. They'll be very organised. They'll try and stifle every moment of the game. We'll be frustrated every time the ball goes out of play in favour of a Dundee United player because it's going to be 45 seconds before it's anywhere near a pitch again. We need to get a goal early and stop that. It's so important that we start this game properly and don't let them get anything in the way of their tails up, especially a goal against us. You need to nip that in the bud very quickly and go for them and go for their throats and try and kill them, because if they get any confidence and they're able to let us play in front of them, I'd be concerned. Yeah,
Rangers have got to be on their game certainly for that one. But Kieran, before I ask you for your lineup and a predicted score, is it just a case of from now certainly until the January transfer window that Rangers just have to take this game at a time and just that? I know that's the oldest cliche in football, and I often roll my eyes when footballers are doing press conferences or post-match interviews and they roll that phrase out, but I've never felt that this is more apt to a club than Rangers at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. You couldn't have said it any better. I think in terms of the bugbear for us and the monkey on the back is that how long it's been since we've beat Celtic in a meaningful game. So we don't play them until New Year. So between then and now, it's got to be one game at a time, 3 points at a time. Cup games, we've got to go and win them. And we've got to build up a momentum and a confidence that's going to get us back in the title race. I think the old Gerrard saying is, let's see who blinks first, and hopefully it's them and we can claw back a couple of points, because I think it would get our tails up. Clement showed that he can get a tune out of a team where you play 1 week one game at a time, and your focus is on the next game and the game after that, and you're not looking too far ahead. So there has got to be a drive towards keeping things on track between now and the new year, and then hopefully we're still within touch and distance and the tails are up when we meet again come Ibrox at the new year, and we can really build a momentum and build a title challenge. It's going to be tough. Let's not beat around the bush. It is going to be tough, but one game at a time, you never know.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's just the way it is already at the start of the season. But John, I'll just get a sort of predicted lineup from you before you go, and yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what you think how we'll line up against Dundee United this weekend.
So it will be 4-2-3-1. That won't change. I reckon it'll be Butland, Tav, Suter, proper, hefty. I think it'll be Raskin and Diomande as the two in midfield sitting. I think it'll be Cherny. I think Bajrami will come in and start. The left wing position's what I can't decide on. I've not got a clue as to Igamani, Cortez, ex-player that comes in that position. I'm not sure if McCausland, because he's the one that came on in the old firm. So,
what would be your preference? Who would you start? I know we've only seen 10 minutes of Igaman, but would it be? It's between Cortez and Igaman, surely.
Igamani for me. I thought. Yep. He's only going to come on and be rubbish. Like that's the worst thing that can happen. As he comes on for 45 minutes, he's poor, and you can bring on McCausland, you can bring on a left back and put Hefty forward. You can change things, but I would like to see him from the start. He came on in an old firm for the last 15 minutes, which is a lot harder than starting the game at Dundee United. You've had 2 more weeks of training to do that physicality work that you're talking about. Dessers will be the number 9. That's not going to change. So I would like to see Igamani. I think I know what Ross McCausland brings to the team. I think Cortez has come back from a slight injury. I'm still concerned about him overall. Injury-wise, not ability-wise, I'm pretty confident he's a cracking player. But I think it's that. I think Connor Barron is as good as he's been for us. I think he's been forced to do too much too soon in his Rangers career. And I thought Raskin looked pretty tidy again when he came on. I wouldn't mind seeing Barron maybe just in... Barron's been away with Scotland, so there's a potential that Raskin's been in and working on whatever we're working on for Dundee United. I know Diamonde's been away, so I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot there, but Diamonde's played a bounce game against the under-21s and played the last 20 minutes last night for Ivory Coast, so providing he's back, I reckon it'll be Raskin and Diamonde as the two sitting.
Yeah, that'll be good. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But I think it makes sense exactly what you're saying there. Kieran, before I come on to you, there's a couple in here. JD says Balogun proper at centre back. Fraser, he's got Kasanwirjo at right back. Fraser. This is a very, very comprehensive lineup. I'll tell you that. Barron, Raskin with Bajrami, Jeffy left wing. Was an interesting shout. Cherny right wing and Igaman starting. Dessers to come on late. RFC72 says I hope for Butland, Sterling, Casa, Insiala, Jefte, Barron, Dio, Cortez, Bajrami, Lovelace. I'm all for that. Igaman, but it'll be Tav, Butland, Suter, Proper, Jefte, Barron, Dio, Bajrami, Lawrence, Cherny, Dessers. And Luke Gibson says Butland, Sterling, Suter, Proper, Jefte, Dio, Mande, Barron, Bajrami, Cherny, Dessers, and Igaman. It's certainly, I think Igaman certainly caught the imagination of a few. And what would be your lineup there, Kieran?
Some crazy lineups there. Like, see when you play FIFA at your mate's house and you're at the start screen where you're both setting your teams out. They're the type that are sitting there for a good 3 minutes, sorting their team out. Some crazy suggestions here, but hey, each to their own. That's what we're here for. But the team I would start with probably a lot different from what Clement would start with. I'd be going Butland, Sterling at right back. I'd probably go Suter and Balogun centre back. I've not seen anything of Proper that's impressed me yet. Left back would be Jefte. In the middle for me, Barron and Diamande. Both have done fine for me. They're still both learning, still young players. In the front of them, I'd have... Name escapes me. Albanian. We've just spoken about
Bajrami.
I'd have Bajrami straight into
Bajrami.
the 10. Bajrami for Bajrami. Tierney off the right. I think it'll be McCausland off the left. If Cortez is fit, I think I would play Cortez, but I think it'll be McCausland to get brought on the left-hand side against Ross County, then come on for Matondo on the left-hand side at Parkhead. I'd love to see Igmani through the middle, but I think it will be Dessers.
Yeah, I think it'll be Dessers as well. Just listen, I think Ross McCausland, he's not a Rangers player. I'll leave it at that before I say anything else. And before we go, John, a score prediction for the weekend?
2-1 to Rangers.
Yeah, I'll take that up at Tannadice every day of the week. And is from yourself as well, Kyran?
I was going to go 2-1, but I'll go 2-0 just to be a bit more positive.
Listen, I'll take that all day long. But listen, that just about wraps it up. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, watching. Thanks for the comments as always. You know, we're available on audio platforms as well. If you missed the live pod or you like listening to it rather than watching it on YouTube, just get us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well there. And just remember, you can do us a massive favour. Give us a wee like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. But thank you all, everybody, for tuning in and watching. Thank you to my two guests, and we'll see you all again soon.